The rain came down like it was angry with the city. Marcus Webb stood in his garage doorway at 2 in the morning. A chipped black mug hung from his fingers. The coffee inside had gone cold an hour ago, but he held it anyway. The weight of it kept him grounded. The familiar chill kept him steady. Upstairs, his daughter Riley was sleeping. He'd checked on her 10 minutes before stepping outside. She lay with one arm hanging off the edge of the mattress. Her face was peaceful. The kind of peaceful that only childhood allowed. That small, trusting face was the reason he existed. The reason he woke up every morning. The reason he never let himself break. 3 years. That's how long it had been since his wife walked out. She'd left quietly, the way she did everything. No screaming, no dramatic accusations, just a simple statement. I can't do this version of things anymore. Marcus had watched her pack. He'd driven her to the airport. He'd come home to a house that suddenly felt too large. He never asked her to explain. Never asked which version she meant. The marriage, the life, the man he'd become. He suspected she couldn't articulate it anyway. Some things just die. They don't announce themselves. They simply fade. The night shift at the Department of Electrical Infrastructure kept him sane. Maintenance and fault detection, that's what he did. He drove through dark streets finding problems that had solutions, fixing things that were broken. It was honest work, the kind of work where you could see the results of your labor. When the lights came back on, you knew you'd done something that mattered. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't going to make him rich. But it paid enough. As long as enough didn't require too precise a definition. He thought about his daughter sleeping upstairs. She'd been 7 when her mother left. She was 9 now. She'd learned to ask fewer questions. That was the thing that haunted him most. The silence she'd retreated into. The way she'd stopped expecting adults to stay. The sound cut through the rain like a knife through silk. A harsh scraping. Metal against pavement. Then the heavy thud of something hitting wet concrete, again and again. Marcus's jaw tightened. He set down the mug on the wooden workbench behind him. He stepped fully into the doorway, his eyes narrowed through the curtain of rainfall. The street lamp glowed yellow against the darkness. In that light he could make out the shape of a car. Not just any car, but the kind of car that spoke of a different life. A Range Rover. Black. Expensive. The sort of vehicle that belonged in driveways with circular entrances and fountains. A woman stood beside it, even from this distance, even through the rain. Marcus could see she was soaked through. Her movements were frantic, but controlled, the way someone moves when they're in survival mode, when their body has learned to function on pure necessity. Box after box came out of the house next door. She wasn't packing carefully. She was moving with urgency that suggested she had limited time. Then Marcus noticed the eviction notice taped to her front door, even from across the property line, even with the rain blurring everything. The bright orange color glowed under the street lamp, like a neon sign of failure. He almost went back inside. That was his instinct. Close the garage door. Go back to the kitchen. Heat up the coffee. Take it upstairs. Sit on Riley's floor for a while. Watch her sleep. Remind himself that he'd protected what mattered. He'd built walls around himself and his daughter. Those walls had kept them both alive through the worst of it. But then the woman stumbled. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't fall. Her foot caught on the edge of a box. She caught herself against the car. Her hand gripped the metal frame. What struck Marcus wasn't her near fall. It was the way her shoulders shook, just for a moment. Not crying, not outwardly, but the kind of breaking that happens when someone runs out of strength, when they have nowhere else to go. Marcus recognized that kind of breaking. He'd seen it in the mirror. He pulled on his work jacket, the heavy canvas one, the one with the Department of Electrical Infrastructure patch on the shoulder. He stepped out into the rain, without letting himself think about it too much. The cold hit him instantly, soaking through his shirt within seconds. The boots he wore were waterproof, but his jeans weren't. None of it mattered. When he reached her driveway, the woman spun around, startled. For just a moment, recognition flickered across her face. She'd seen him before. Of course, they were neighbors. But she'd always moved quickly between her car and her house, like someone chasing deadlines the world couldn't see. In that instant of recognition, Marcus saw something shift. Something clicked into place. She had been a different person, he realized. Someone important. Someone used to control. And whatever had happened to her had taken that away. "You're going to ruin those books if you keep packing like that." Marcus said this calmly, his voice steady, the way he spoke to Riley when she was panicked about something, the way that didn't require an immediate answer, just acknowledgement. "I know what I'm doing," she replied, but there was no conviction in it, just exhaustion. Marcus gestured at the sedan's open trunk. The suspension was sagging on one side. Water dripped steadily into the overloaded interior. "Your car suspension is shot," he said. "You won't fit half of this anyway." The woman looked at her belongings, the way someone might look at the wreckage of their life, which Marcus realized was exactly what this was. Without waiting for permission, he pulled the heavy tarp from his shoulder. He always carried one. In his line of work, you learn to prepare for emergencies. He began spreading it over the most exposed boxes. "You don't have to do this," the woman said quietly. "I know," Marcus replied, "but I'm doing it anyway." Her name was Victoria Ashford. She told him this later, when the rain had intensified, when they were both soaked through. She had a job once, VP of development at a commercial real estate firm. A nice life, a secure life. Then the merger had happened. The new leadership wanted her to greenlight a project she knew was wrong. Not just unprofitable, wrong. The kind of wrong that displaced families. Families who'd lived in neighborhoods for generations. The kind of wrong that turned homes into investments, people into commodities. She'd refused. They'd fired her quietly. No drama. Just a severance package. A reference that said nothing of the truth. Then her ex-partner had taken the severance money. The money she'd left with him while she was trying to figure out what came next. He'd promised to pay it back. He'd promised a lot of things. In the end, he'd promised nothing. Just disappeared into the kind of silence that means someone never intended to keep their word. The eviction notice had come 3 days ago. Marcus listened to all of this, sitting in her kitchen later that evening, after he'd helped her move everything inside his guest suite downstairs. He didn't ask many questions. Sometimes people need to talk. Sometimes they need someone to just listen. Victoria seemed like the second kind of person, someone who'd learned that speaking too much invited criticism. "Where will you go?" Marcus asked when she'd finished explaining her situation. "A motel, maybe," she said. "If I can afford storage for some of this." She gestured vaguely at the boxes, the fragments of a life hastily assembled. "I have savings," she continued. "Not much, but enough for a few weeks while I figure things out." Marcus heard the lie in that. Not a malicious lie, just the kind of lie people tell themselves when they need to pretend they still have control over something. "You could stay here," Marcus said. The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. "I have the guest suite downstairs," he continued. "It was supposed to be a rental space, but I never got around to finishing it properly." Victoria's head snapped up. Her eyes searched his face, looking for mockery, for hidden motives, for the catch that always came with kindness. "That's not funny," she said. "I'm not joking. Why would you do that?" Marcus thought about his daughter sleeping upstairs. He thought about the life he'd built, always being careful, always protecting what was his, always keeping people at arm's length. He thought about loneliness, the kind that slowly becomes normal, the kind that you don't even realize is killing you. until someone offers you an alternative. Because nobody should do this alone, Marcus said. The rain didn't stop that night. It continued through the dawn, hammering against the windows, with a persistence that suggested it had nowhere else to be. Marcus stood in his kitchen the next morning, watching Riley color at the table. She was making pictures, a house with a tree, stick figures in the yard, everything drawn with the careful seriousness of a child who understood that family was something you had to hold on to. She looked up when he set the cereal box in front of her. "Why is the sad lady living here?" Riley asked. "She needs help for a little while," Marcus said carefully. "Her house situation changed," he continued. "We're letting her stay downstairs until she gets things sorted." Riley nodded, accepting this with the simple logic of a child. She didn't question whether they had the right to help. That's something children understand, before adults teach them to be suspicious, before the world teaches them that kindness always comes with a cost. Over the following days, Marcus began to piece together the fuller picture, the fuller truth of who Victoria Ashford actually was. Her phone rang constantly. Professional voices. "Ms. Ashford, we need to discuss your severance package. Your documentation is ready for review. We have an HR specialist available if you want to discuss the settlement terms." She never answered, just silenced the phone. Set it aside. Books stacked up on her side table. Business economics, case studies on ethics and development, power dynamics in corporate environments. Not beach reading, not escape. The kind of books someone reads when they're trying to rebuild empires. On the third day, a man in a $3,000 suit came by. He hugged Victoria, for longer than necessary, held her in a way that suggested there might have been something between them, beyond professional. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, a feeling he had no right to feel. For a woman he barely knew, but he recognized it anyway. She was beautiful in a way that Marcus's previous life had never equipped him to understand. Not the kind of beauty that belongs on magazine covers. The kind of beauty that came from intelligence, from having built something real, from knowing her own mind, the kind that made her dangerous. On the fifth day, Victoria knocked on his door, after Riley was asleep. "We need to talk," she said. Marcus invited her inside. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Riley drew her careful pictures. Victoria laid out her terms. With the precision of someone used to negotiating contracts. She couldn't stay as a charity case. It didn't work for her. Psychologically, if she was staying, she needed to contribute. She would cook, she would help with Riley's schoolwork. She would manage Marcus's finances if he wanted. She would do whatever needed doing, to pull her weight. And then she told him who she really was. VP of Development. Fired for ethics. Financial betrayal by her ex-partner. The whole architecture of her collapse. Marcus listened. When she was done, he set his own terms. "You don't owe me gratitude," Marcus said. "You're not indebted to me." He continued. "But if you ever feel like you're drowning if this stops working, you tell me." He paused. "Tell me out loud," he said. "Not when it's too late," he continued. "In the moment." He paused again. "Because I'm not letting someone I care about disappear without explanation." His voice cracked slightly on those last words. Victoria understood that he was talking about someone else, someone who'd already left. "My wife," Marcus said, answering the question in her eyes. "She left 3 years ago," he continued. "Very quietly," he said. "Never really explained." He paused. "And I never got to fight for her." His voice grew softer. "Never got to ask her to stay," he said. "Just one day she asked me to take her to the airport, and that was the end of it." Victoria nodded slowly. Something shifted between them. It wasn't quite trust, but it was the beginning of something, a mutual understanding. They were both people who'd been broken by the world, both trying to figure out how to live after that breaking. "I won't leave without telling you," Victoria said again. "Good," Marcus replied. By the end of the week, Victoria had landed her first consulting client. She'd reached out to small developers, people who'd tried to poach her before she fell. Now she was offering her expertise, part-time, 10 hours a month for $2,000. It wasn't much, but it was hers. It was proof that she could still build something. She opened her own checking account. She began contributing to the household. Small amounts, but amounts that mattered. She was paying her way. She was choosing to stay. Marcus recognized something in her resilience. It mirrored his own. Two people who'd learned how to rebuild alone, now learning how to rebuild together. It took Marcus 3 weeks to fully understand the woman living in his guest suite. She moved through his house with increasing familiarity, always with a kind of awareness, like she was occupying space she was grateful for, but didn't quite believe was hers to occupy. She cooked elaborate meals, not simple food, complex things that required technique and patience and skill. She cooked like someone who'd learned something important, that feeding people was a way of saying thank you, when words weren't enough. Riley watched her cook, with the kind of focused attention children bring to things that fascinate them. Victoria didn't baby her, didn't speak down to her, just let her participate in the process. Let her stir things and taste things, ask questions about flavors and ingredients. By the 4th week, Riley was standing on a stool beside the counter, helping to chop vegetables. "Why did you have to leave your old job?" Riley asked one evening. Her small hands worked carefully with a butter knife on a bell pepper. Victoria didn't answer immediately. She stirred whatever was on the stove, took time with it. "Sometimes," she said finally. "People ask you to do things that you know are wrong." She paused. "And even though saying no might cost you everything, saying yes would cost you more." "What would it cost you?" Riley asked. "My sense of who I am," Victoria said. "The part of myself I need to keep to know I'm a good person." Riley considered this, with the seriousness of a child absorbing real wisdom. Then she went back to chopping vegetables. But there were moments when Marcus noticed Victoria in the quiet hours, late at night, sitting at her small laptop, spreadsheets glowing in the darkness, running numbers, planning scenarios, always preparing for something. He recognized the behavior, because he did it himself. The constant contingency planning of someone who'd learned something important, that the world wasn't safe. There was a photograph on her nightstand in the guest suite. Marcus saw it once, when bringing in clean towels, Victoria in business clothes, standing in front of a skyline, younger, confident, the kind of confident that came from believing the world wanted you to succeed. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone harder to read, someone who'd learned that vulnerability could be weaponized, someone rebuilding from the foundation up, measuring each step, trusting nothing. Yet something was happening to both of them. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something like the beginning of it. The kind of beginning that starts when two broken people recognize something of themselves in each other, when they realize that maybe breaking wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. Victoria made her move on a cool Saturday morning. 6 weeks after moving in, she knocked on Marcus's bedroom door. He was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, mentally preparing for another night shift. He opened the door and found her standing in the hallway, with the kind of determined expression he was beginning to recognize. "We need to have a conversation," she said. "Not about leaving," she continued, "but about staying." They went downstairs to the kitchen. Victoria sat across from him at the table, the same table where Riley drew her pictures, where they'd shared countless meals in the past 6 weeks. She was wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back. And when she began to speak, she spoke with precision. The precision of someone used to boardrooms and negotiations. "I can't live here as a charity case," she said. "It's been 6 weeks and I'm grateful," she continued. "But gratitude is slowly poisoning me," she said. "It makes me feel like I owe you something." She paused. "Like I'm here because of your goodness rather than because of my own strength." She looked directly at him. "I need to change that." Marcus started to speak, but Victoria held up a hand. "I'm going to pay rent," she said. "Not money right now, I don't have it." She continued. "But I'm going to work," she said. "Really work." She paused. "I'm already consulting, but I'm going to expand that," she said. "Build it into something more substantial." She took a breath. "In the meantime, I'm going to take over the household management." She continued. "Bills, groceries, scheduling Riley's education," she said. "I'm going to earn my place here, not be granted it." She leaned forward slightly. "And I need you to be honest with me if this isn't working," she said. "Not a kind version of honesty," she continued. "The real thing." She paused. "Tell me if I'm overstepping or causing problems or if you need me to find somewhere else," she said. "Because I can't keep living on borrowed time," she continued. "I need structure," she said. "I need purpose." She paused. "I need to feel like I have some agency in this situation." Marcus listened to all of this without interrupting. When she was done, he took a moment before responding. "Okay," Marcus said. "But we need ground rules on my end, too." He continued. "You don't minimize what's happening here by turning it into a transaction," he said. "You don't treat yourself like a domestic worker." He paused. "You're not indebted to me for basic human kindness." He continued. "And if you ever start planning an exit strategy, if you ever reach a point where you're mentally checking out, you tell me in real time," he said. "Not when it's too late," he continued. "Not when you've already decided to leave." He paused. "But in the moment," he said. Victoria's eyes widened at the intensity of this, at the way Marcus was essentially saying something profound, something that mattered. "I'm building this with you," Marcus said, "and I need you to build it with me." He continued. "Not just inhabit it," he said, "but actually build it." "What happened with your wife, Victoria?" asked quietly. "I don't know," Marcus said, and the honesty of this seemed to cost him something. "I was so focused on building the life I thought we were supposed to have that I forgot to actually live with her," he said. "And by the time I realized something was wrong, she was already gone." He continued. "I'm telling you all this because I don't want to make that mistake again," he said. "I don't want to wake up one day and discover I was so busy protecting myself and Riley that I missed the opportunity to actually let someone in." Victoria reached across the table and placed her hand on top of his. It was the most vulnerable gesture she'd made since arriving at his house. A moment of genuine connection, unguarded and real. "I won't leave without telling you," she said again. "Good," Marcus replied, "because I need to know if we're really doing this or if this is just a stopping point for you." "What is this?" Victoria asked. Marcus looked at her hand on his, at the way she was sitting across from him, at the history already written in the short weeks they'd known each other. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I think I want to find out." By the following week, Victoria had signed 2 new consulting contracts. She was helping small developers navigate ethical frameworks. For community development, the work played to her strengths, her understanding of business, her unwillingness to compromise on ethics. By the second month, she had 5 clients. By the third month, she was turning work away. She opened a business bank account. She put her name on some of the household bills. She became less a guest and more a resident. Less someone asking for permission, more someone making decisions. Riley started calling her Victoria instead of the lady downstairs. Then just Victoria became Vic at some point, which Victoria accepted with the kind of smile that said something important, that she understood the weight of being included in someone's shorthand. Sarah appeared on a Tuesday afternoon with a box of coffee, and the kind of smile that suggested she'd been planning this visit for longer than the 15 minutes it took her to drive to Marcus's house. She was beautiful in the way that easy lives produce beauty, unburdened, uncomplicated. She'd been Marcus's girlfriend in college, before he'd met his wife, before he'd built a life. She'd resurfaced a few months ago when they'd run into each other at the grocery store. They'd exchanged numbers as friends. Victoria watched from the kitchen, as Sarah settled onto the couch beside Marcus, their shoulders nearly touching. Sarah laughed at something he said, a loud, unguarded laugh, the kind of laugh that comes from someone who's never had to protect themselves with silence. Marcus laughed too, easier than Victoria had ever heard him laugh. His shoulders relaxed, his posture opened. He became a different version of himself, lighter, less burdened by the weight of responsibility. This was the man Sarah knew, not the tired father who came home from night shifts and immediately checked on his sleeping daughter, not the careful man who measured his words and protected his vulnerability. Just Marcus, unburdened. Victoria excused herself to her room and closed the door. She told herself she wasn't being unreasonable. She told herself that Marcus was a free agent, that she had no claim on him, that Sarah was offering something Victoria couldn't: simplicity, uncomplicated affection, a future without complications. But what she felt was jealousy, pure and uncomplicated in its own way. Sarah left after 3 hours. Marcus came to Victoria's room looking for her. He found her sitting at her small desk, her laptop open to job listings she wasn't really looking at. "Where did you go?" he asked. "I had work to do," Victoria said without turning around. "That's not true," Marcus replied. Victoria turned then, and the expression on her face was carefully controlled. "She seems nice," she said. "Sarah," she continued. "She seems very nice." She paused. "Very simple," she said. "Very uncomplicated." She took a breath. "She probably doesn't wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about her failures or spend half her day preparing exit strategies." She continued. "She's probably just easy to be with." Marcus moved into the room. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Being realistic," Victoria said. "You're a good man with a daughter who needs stability." She continued. "Sarah offers you something I can't." She paused. "A future without baggage," she said. "A woman who hasn't been broken by the world and put herself back together with duct tape and denial." "Is that what you think you are?" Marcus asked. "I know what I am," Victoria said. "I'm a woman who's terrified of trusting again," she continued. "I'm someone who still has escape plans memorized." She paused. "I'm someone who wakes up wondering when you're going to realize you could do better." Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. "Come here," he said quietly. "No, Victoria, come here." She did, moving to stand in front of him. He took her hands in his. "I don't want easy," Marcus said. "Easy is boring," he continued. "Easy is what my wife gave me, no complaints, no demands, no real connection," he said. "Easy is what killed my marriage." He paused. "You're not easy," Marcus said. "You're real," he continued, "and that matters to me more than uncomplicated ever will." He pulled her closer, and for a moment they just stood there, him sitting, her standing between his knees, their foreheads nearly touching. "Sarah makes more sense for you," Victoria whispered. "I don't want what makes sense," Marcus said. "I want what's real." When they kissed, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate. The kind of kiss that comes from people who've been holding themselves at a distance and suddenly can't maintain that distance anymore. It was a kiss that said something important, something profound. It said, "I see you, all of you, and I'm choosing you anyway." Victoria pulled away first, stepping back, wrapping her arms around herself. "I can't do this," she said. "Why not?" Marcus asked. "Because I'll lose myself," Victoria said. "Because I'll become one of those women who let someone else define her." She paused. "Because the moment I fully invest in this, you'll realize that I'm too much damage to be worth it." Marcus got up and moved to her, but Victoria held up a hand. "I need space," she said, "to figure out who I am without you." She continued, "To make sure I'm choosing this because it's real and not because I'm desperate." She paused. "I need to know that I'm choosing from a place of strength, not a place of fear." Marcus wanted to argue, but something in her face told him that arguing would be a mistake, that Victoria needed to make this choice on her own terms. "Okay," he said finally, "but I'm not giving up on this." He paused. "I'm not giving up on you." Victoria left the next morning, not dramatically, just packed a bag, and quietly moved into a studio apartment on the other side of the city. She left a note sitting on her cleared-out nightstand. Marcus found it later that morning. He read it 3 times, then set it down carefully as if the paper itself might break if he handled it too roughly. "I'm sorry," the note said. "This wasn't about you." It continued. "It was about me being afraid." She'd written, "Thank you for everything." The note concluded, V. The call came 2 weeks later, early morning. Marcus Webb. A professional voice. The kind that belonged to people who made their living on the phone. "This is James Chen from the Department of Electrical Infrastructure." The voice continued. "I'm calling about a special opportunity that's come across our desk." Marcus sat up in bed, instantly alert. Opportunity meant change. Change meant complicated. "The state is expanding infrastructure operations to the capital," the voice said. "We're looking to build a new electrical grid infrastructure from the ground up." It continued. "It's a 2-year project and we need someone to lead the installation phase." Marcus's heart started moving faster. "The position comes with a salary of $85,000 annually." The voice continued. "That's almost double your current salary." It paused. "We're also offering housing assistance and a tuition scholarship for dependents in the state school system." The voice said, "We'd like you to visit the capital, see the project scope, tour schools, and then make your decision." It continued. "We need an answer within 3 weeks." After the call ended, Marcus sat in the dark of his bedroom for a very long time. $85,000. That was the number he'd dreamed about for years. That was security. That was the ability to send Riley to good schools. That was being able to afford college funds and down payments on houses and all the things that parents were supposed to be able to provide. That was everything he'd wanted. Except it meant leaving the city. It meant taking Riley away from her school, from her friends, from the small life they'd built. It meant starting over in a new place. It meant leaving Victoria. The timing felt cruel, deliberately cruel, like the universe was testing him. That same week, a lawyer's letter arrived via certified mail. It was from his late wife's mother. She'd hired an attorney. She wanted to challenge Marcus's custody of Riley. She was claiming concerns about household stability and unsuitable environmental factors. The letter was vague, but the implication was clear. Someone had seen something, or someone had talked. Someone had suggested that Marcus's living situation was unstable. Someone had noticed Victoria. Marcus felt the walls closing in. He had 3 weeks to make a decision about the job. He had no timeline on the custody challenge. but his lawyer informed him that these things could take months to sort out. He had a daughter to protect, a woman he couldn't stop thinking about, and a choice that seemed to present only losing options. He didn't tell Victoria about either of these things immediately, but Victoria was smart. She noticed his distance. She noticed the way he was suddenly hypervigilant about Riley's routine, documenting everything, making their household look as stable and appropriate as possible. She noticed him checking his phone more often, his face growing tighter. So she asked him directly, one evening after Riley was in bed. "What's happening?" she said. And Marcus told her everything. The job offer, the salary, the relocation, the custody challenge, the implication that her presence in the house was somehow creating instability. Victoria listened, her face growing more and more still as he talked. When he finished, she said only one thing. "I should leave." "No, Marcus, this is exactly what I was afraid of," Victoria said. "I came into your life, and now there are legal challenges and complications." She continued. "If I wasn't here, nobody would question your stability," she said. "If I wasn't here, you could take the job and give Riley the best life possible. I'm going to find an apartment." Victoria continued, already moving toward her room. "I'll be gone by the end of the week," she said. "You'll take the job, you'll give Riley the opportunities she deserves, and you can tell the lawyers that you've made your household more appropriate." "I don't want you to leave," Marcus said, his voice cracking. Victoria paused at her door. "Yes, you do," she said quietly. "You just don't realize it yet." The argument happened in Marcus's bedroom after Riley was asleep. "You can't do this," Victoria said. Her voice was brittle with emotion she was trying very hard to contain. "You can't sacrifice your future for someone you've known for 3 months." "I'm not sacrificing anything," Marcus replied. "I'm making a choice. A choice you'll resent," Victoria said. 3 years from now, when Riley is 15 and asking why she's not at a better school when you're still working night shifts because you didn't take the promotion, you'll look at me and resent everything I've cost you. They were standing in his bedroom, the space around them charged with all the things they'd been avoiding saying. The windows were dark. Outside, the city went about its business, indifferent to the small tragedy unfolding behind one closed door. "I've already made my decision," Marcus said quietly. "About what?" "About the job," Marcus said. "I'm declining the relocation offer." Victoria's face went pale. "You didn't." "I'm accepting a position as senior electrical engineer with the same company." Marcus continued. $62,000, he said. "Same city." He paused. "I already spoke to my employer this morning." Victoria sat down on the edge of the bed, like her legs had given out. "You didn't do that," she said. "I did." "That's less than you make now with overtime, I know." "Marcus, that's your daughter's future?" "That is my daughter's future," Marcus said, and his voice was hard now. "Certain. Her future is knowing that love isn't a luxury that only rich people get to have." He continued. "Her future is seeing what commitment looks like when someone actually chooses to stay instead of running." He paused. "I'm not giving up anything," he said. "I'm gaining everything." Victoria stood up, pacing the small space of his bedroom like a caged animal. "This is noble," she said harshly. "This is the kind of thing people do in stories." She continued. "But this is real life, Marcus," she said. "In real life, you work the job that pays the most." She continued. "You build security," she said. "You provide for your child. I am providing for my child." Marcus said. "Not just financially," he continued. "Emotionally," he said. "Spiritually." He paused. "She's watched one woman leave her," Marcus continued. "I'm not going to be the man who lets another one go." "I'm not your wife," Victoria said. "I know," Marcus replied. "And I'm probably going to leave anyway." "No, you're not," Marcus said with absolute certainty. "You're going to run because you're terrified," he continued. "But you're not going to actually leave," he said. "Not unless you tell me to your face that you're leaving." He paused. "Not unless you stop running from something and start running toward something," he continued. "And I'm betting I'm putting everything on the bet that once you stop running, you're going to want to stay." Victoria felt tears starting. She turned away from him. "You don't know that," she said. "I know you," Marcus said. "I know that you set up that fake apartment to have an escape route," he continued. "I know you still look at rental listings at 3 a.m, he said. "I know you're terrified." He paused. "But I also know that you haven't left," Marcus continued. "Not really," he said. "Not yet." He paused. "And that means something. It means I'm weak," Victoria said bitterly. "It means you're human," Marcus said. "It means you want to stay, but you're afraid it won't work." He continued. "I understand that," he said. "But I'm asking you to take the risk anyway." Victoria went to her room that night without answering him. She lay awake until dawn, listening to the silence of the house, feeling the weight of everything that had been said. By morning, she'd made her decision. She packed a bag and left. This time, she didn't leave a note. Victoria's apartment was small and cheap, and exactly what she thought she deserved. That's what she told herself anyway. That this bare space with its fluorescent lights and thin walls and the sound of neighbors living lives through the plumbing, this was what happened when you let yourself hope for something better. This was the punishment for briefly believing that you could be worthy of something real. She sat on the edge of her bed, the same bed she'd had for 5 years, the one thing she'd managed to hold on to through the collapse of her life, and did what she always did when things got hard. She made plans to leave. She looked at job listings in other cities. She researched apartments in places where nobody knew her. She built mental escape routes and measured them against her current reality. It was a pattern so ingrained that she didn't even realize she was doing it, until her laptop screen went blurry through unshed tears. The phone call came on a Wednesday afternoon. "Victoria, it's Margaret Chen from the development consulting firm," the voice said. "We have a proposition for you." Margaret explained the situation. The company wanted to expand into full project leadership. They wanted Victoria to head a major initiative, full-time, substantial salary, the kind of opportunity that rebuilt careers. They wanted her back. "We need an answer by Friday," Margaret said. "The position requires relocation to the regional office, but we can have all the details sorted quickly." Victoria listened, and for a moment, just a moment, she imagined taking it. The escape, the rebuilding on her own terms, a future that didn't require trusting anyone else. "I need to think about it," Victoria said, which was what she always said when she was trying to buy time to run. But that evening she made herself actually think. She thought about Marcus, sitting on his daughter's floor at night, checking on her sleeping face. She thought about the way his hands shook the first time he'd held hers. She thought about the choice he'd made, turning down $85,000 to stay in a city with a woman he'd known for 3 months. She thought about what kind of person actually did that. She thought about what kind of person deserved to have someone do that for them. And then she thought about the life she could have if she actually stopped running, if she actually stayed, if she actually let someone love her without keeping an escape plan active. "I need to call you back," she told Margaret. "I need to do something first." She called Marcus. Her hands were shaking so badly that she almost dropped the phone. "I need to talk to you," she said when he answered. "Not about leaving," she continued. "About staying." Marcus opened his door on a Friday evening to find Victoria standing on his porch. She was wearing the same black coat she'd worn the night of her eviction, the one that had been so expensive before it was soaked through with rain. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was exhausted, but determined. "I declined the job," she said before he could say anything. "I called them back and declined," she continued. "I told them I was staying here." Marcus stepped aside to let her in. Victoria moved past him into the house that had become her home. They sat at the kitchen table, that same table where Riley drew her pictures, where they'd made 1,000 small decisions that had added up to something real. "I didn't call you here to make grand declarations," Victoria said quietly. "I'm still scared." She continued, "I'm still going to wake up some mornings and wonder when this falls apart," she said. "I'm still going to have moments where I want to leave." She paused. "That's going to be part of this," she said. "That's the damage I carry." "I know," Marcus said, "but I'm not going to act on it anymore." Victoria continued. "I'm not going to leave when things get hard," she said. "I'm not going to prepare escape routes." She paused. "I'm going to actually stay and do the work and trust that we can figure this out." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Victoria's breath caught. "Not yet," Marcus said quickly. "Not a proposal yet." He continued. "We haven't even been together officially," he said. "But this is a promise of one." He continued. "A ring that says I see where this is going," he said. "I'm choosing to go there with you." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring. "Not flashy, not expensive, just real. I need to know you're choosing this," Marcus said. "Not because you're desperate or lonely or running from something," he continued, "but because you actually want to build something with me and Riley," he said. "Because you believe that we're worth the risk." Victoria took the ring and looked at it for a long time. Then she slipped it onto her finger. "I believe," she said. "I'm terrified, but I believe." The courthouse was cold and formal, and smelled like floor wax and broken dreams. Marcus sat in the waiting area with Victoria beside him, her hand holding his. Riley's maternal grandmother sat across from them with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit, who smelled of cologne and confidence. The accusations in the custody challenge were vague, flexible. Household instability, multiple women in the home, unsuitable environmental factors, nothing specific enough to prove, but specific enough to cast doubt on Marcus's fitness as a parent. Marcus's lawyer was good. He'd brought documentation, school records showing that Riley was thriving, letters from her teacher, testimony from Marcus's employer about his reliability and character. And he brought Victoria, not as a witness, but as proof. Victoria sat in the courtroom, wearing her business dress, the first time she'd dressed that way since falling, and the judge saw a woman of substance, a woman with a career, a woman who clearly cared about the family she was part of. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. The judge reviewed the evidence. He looked at the accusations and found them baseless. He looked at Riley's school performance and saw a thriving child. He looked at Marcus and saw a dedicated father. He looked at Victoria and saw someone who'd chosen to be part of this family. "I find no evidence of instability or unsuitable conditions," the judge said. "Custody remains with the father." He continued. "The challenge is dismissed." Walking out of the courtroom, Riley grabbed both of their hands. "Does this mean Victoria's definitely my family?" Riley asked, the way only a child could ask such profound questions so simply. Victoria knelt down to look Riley in the eye. "If you want me to be," she said. Riley didn't hesitate. "I want you to be," she said. The news story broke 6 months after Victoria started her consulting firm. An investigative journalist had been researching commercial development patterns in the city. They discovered the project that Victoria had refused to greenlight at her previous job. The project was supposed to displace 200 families from neighborhoods that had housed multi-generational communities for decades. The journalist had traced the money They'd found the corruption. They'd exposed the infrastructure of the scheme, how developers and politicians had been working together to rezone residential areas, price out current residents, and rebuild the neighborhoods as luxury developments. And they'd found Victoria. She was quoted extensively in the article, not as a victim, as a whistleblower, as someone who'd refused to participate in the scheme, despite the professional cost. The article praised her integrity. It documented the retaliation she'd faced. It made her a hero. The story went viral. By the time the dust settled, Victoria had received job offers from 3 major firms. She'd been interviewed by national media. The project had been halted. The families that would have been displaced were now protected by new zoning regulations, and Victoria's vindication was complete. Marcus watched her during an interview, seeing her back in the power suit, speaking with the authority that came from being right about something important. This was who she'd been before her fall. This was the woman she could be again. When she came home from the interview, Marcus was waiting. "We should talk," he said. Victoria's face went tight. She'd become expert at reading doom in simple statements. "Not about leaving," Marcus said quickly, seeing her fear. "About staying," he continued. "About making it permanent." He took her to the backyard that evening, after Riley was in bed. He'd set it up. Simple candles and paper bags. The way they did it in movies. Not because it was original, but because it felt right. Because some things are cliches, because they matter. "I'm not going to make a big speech," Marcus said, taking her hand. "I'm just going to ask you directly." He paused. "Will you marry me?" Victoria looked at the ring he was holding, then at his face, then back at the ring. "That's a different ring," she said. "It's the one I was supposed to propose with," Marcus said. "I bought it the day I decided to stay in the city." Victoria started crying then. Not sad crying, the kind that comes from relief and happiness, and the knowledge that sometimes the world actually does work out, the way you hope it will. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." The rain came again on their wedding day, just like it had the night they met, but this time it was gentle, just a soft mist, the kind that blessed things rather than tested them. They were married in Marcus's backyard, under a simple arch decorated with white flowers and fairy lights. Riley stood as their ring bearer, wearing the dramatic shoes she'd insisted on wearing to everything formal. She'd drawn pictures of everyone getting married, Marcus with his big smile, Victoria with her hair down, herself holding flowers. The details had been important to her. The ceremony was simple. No church, no elaborate promises about forever. "Just, I choose you," Marcus said. "Today," he continued. "Tomorrow," he paused. "For as long as you'll have me." Victoria said the same words. When they kissed, the small group of family and friends who'd gathered applauded. And in that moment, Marcus understood something that had taken him years to learn. You don't find love, you build it, day by day, choice by choice. With someone who loves you enough to stay when leaving would be easier. Victoria moved in properly after the wedding, though really she'd been moved in for months already. They took down the guest suite sign from the downstairs room and just called it Victoria's office. She had clients to manage, spreadsheets to track, a consulting business that was growing faster than she'd anticipated. But she was always home for dinner, always present when Riley needed help with homework, always there, choosing to stay. The kitchen was warm on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus cooked while Victoria worked on her laptop. Riley sat at the table with her art supplies spread out. It was the kind of ordinary moment that people who'd once been alone learned to treasure. Victoria looked up from her computer and watched Marcus move around the kitchen. The easy competence of someone who'd learned to provide for others. She thought about the night she'd knocked on his door, in the rain, about how close she'd come to never letting anyone help her. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, catching her watching him. "That I almost left," Victoria said. "That I packed a bag and moved to that terrible apartment and was about to turn down everything to keep myself safe." "But you didn't," Marcus said. "No," Victoria agreed. "I didn't." Riley looked up from her picture. "Are you going to tell the sad story again?" she asked in the way children do when they want to hear familiar stories. "Would you like me to?" Victoria asked. Riley nodded. So Victoria told the story. The night of the eviction. The rain. The kind man who offered help. The slow process of learning to trust. But she told it differently now. Not as a tragedy, as a beginning. And they got married. Riley concluded having heard this story enough times to know the ending. They did, Victoria said, taking Marcus's hand. "And they lived happily ever after?" Riley asked. "They're living happily right now," Marcus said. "That's the best kind of ever after," he continued. "The kind you're building every day." The journalism awards ceremony was held in the downtown convention center. Victoria sat beside Marcus in the audience, watching the stage where the investigative journalist who'd exposed the development scheme was receiving recognition for her work, but the journalist mentioned Victoria specifically, praised her integrity, said that this story wouldn't exist without someone having the courage to say no to something wrong, even when that refusal came at a massive cost. Victoria walked to the stage afterward as people applauded. The journalist hugged her. Photographers took pictures. Local news cameras recorded the moment. But what mattered more than the award was the knowledge of what had come from the exposure, the families that would keep their homes, the neighborhoods that would remain as they were. Lived in, real, belonging to the people who'd built them. The project that had been designed to displace them was now permanently halted. Integrity had won. It wasn't redemption. Victoria didn't think of herself as needing redemption. She'd made the right choice at her old job. She'd simply been punished for it. But this exposure, this vindication, this public recognition that she'd been right, it changed something inside her. She was no longer a woman running from her fall. She was a woman who'd been tested and had emerged unchanged in her core values, walking back to where Marcus and Riley were waiting. Victoria understood something about the nature of justice. It doesn't always come quickly. It doesn't always feel dramatic. But when it comes, when the truth is finally told, and the guilty are exposed, and the innocent are vindicated, it settles something deep inside the soul. Marcus kissed her when she reached them. Riley hugged her legs. "You were so pretty up there," Riley said. "I wasn't pretty," Victoria said. "I was just honest. That's prettier." Riley replied with the simple wisdom of a 9-year-old. 2 years passed. The house had changed. Not dramatically, but in the small ways. That show a family has moved from surviving to actually living. The backyard had a garden now. Victoria had started it, and Marcus had built raised beds, and Riley had insisted on growing impossible things, like strawberries and tomatoes. Most of them died, but some flourished. The kitchen had a new table. The old one was still there, pushed against the wall, but they'd upgraded to something bigger, because Victoria's consulting team now worked from home 1 day a week, and they needed space for everyone. Riley was 11 now. She was in a good school. She still wore dramatic shoes to everything. She'd stopped asking when people would leave, though Victoria and Marcus both knew she still had moments when the old fear surfaced. That was the thing about trauma. It didn't disappear completely. It just got smaller and less frequent. Victoria had been offered a position as consultant to the city's development board. It meant reviewing projects, ensuring ethical frameworks, protecting neighborhoods from being exploited. She'd accepted. Marcus still worked for the Department of Electrical Infrastructure, but he'd been promoted. He now oversaw a team. He still worked some night shifts, but he was home more often. He coached Riley's soccer team. He'd taken up running, something he'd never had time for before. They weren't perfect. They argued about finances and housework and the right way to parent. They had nights where the old fears surfaced, where Marcus wondered if he'd sacrificed enough, where Victoria wondered if she was taking too much for granted. They had ordinary problems that ordinary people have. But they had chosen each other, over and over, in big moments and small ones. That Marcus had learned was everything. If this story stayed with you, if you found yourself thinking about Marcus and Victoria, about what it takes to build something real, about the courage it takes to choose someone despite your fear, subscribe to our channel, because we have more stories coming. Stories about grace, stories about second chances, stories about the quiet courage it takes to love well, and to stay when leaving would be easier.